entities linked to Otudeko and Tunde Hassan-Odukale have sold a combined 10.433 billion shares in First Bank Holding Company PLC to RC Investments Management Limited for 323.45 billion naira, the largest off-market transaction in NGX history. The buyer acquired 7.787 billion shares from Otudeko's Barbican Capital and RAML and 2.647 billion from Odukale's Leadway affiliated entities. The CBN reportedly brokered the deal to end a leadership crisis that hindered capital raising efforts. Otudeko exits with 241.4 billion naira after nearly 24 years on the board, closing a defining era for Nigeria's oldest banking group. Odukale and affiliates net 82.1 billion naira from the sale. And we have now Muktar Mohammed, the CEO of FinanceWithMuktar. He joins me from South Carolina, United States, for this conversation. Great to have you in, Mr. Muktar.
Thank you, Juliana, for having me.
Yes, a pleasure. And this has been a long, drawn-out battle. Even in courts, we saw the tussle. We saw what happened at the beginning of the year, and now it appears to be coming, or to have come to an end. Do you also believe so? And is this the end you anticipated?
Yes, I think I anticipated this end, especially for the majority holder about Otudeko. I know a lot of issues have come. There's the legal side of that was ongoing, criminal legal charges that was ongoing also. Then a lot of issues that controversy as regard those shares, whether owned by Honeywell through his proxy. So I'm not surprised, and this is the end we expected, but maybe not not in the kind of mood that we have seen the end. We expected that the end would be more transparent. We'll see whoever is behind the deal. We know where the bank, because First Bank is not just a bank, it's an institution in Nigeria. Remember, First Bank used to serve as the central bank of Nigeria before now. So it's a big institution that cannot be allowed to fail. So we know this was going to be the end, but we thought the end should be more transparent than what we are seeing now.
Mm-hmm. And we know about Otudeko gave up his shares, and in return, they'll be withdrawing the criminal complaints and prosecution by First Bank. But you've brought up issues of transparency. There is a named buyer here, a company that is not so well known. What issues would you say you have around transparency? And we know that initially the reports were suggesting that it was, Femi Otedla had increased his shares in First Holdco, then those were counted and that was clarified. Why do you think that people were making that assumption? And what, again, are your issues around the transparency of this deal?
Okay, I think a lot of people thought it belongs to Femi Otedla because, again, the challenge has been the issue between Femi Otedla about Otudeko and Hassan-Odukale. So those were the leadership crises that we're having there. So everybody thought that this transaction is being handled by by Femi Otedla to make sure that there's a seamless transfer of ownership to him, because they've been that who is the majority shareholder issue. So a lot of people were surprised when this other name comes in. And like you said, nobody really know who's behind this. But why I say there's no transparency is when it comes to high ticketing deal, even if this was a deal that was what we call above the counter deal, was broker, they still needs to know who, and the exchange is supposed to come in to give us more details of who is doing this transaction, especially with the kind of institution that is involved. The central bank, the First Bank of Nigeria, the central bank also have to know, because again, you are talking about almost 25% ownership being passed to a single individual. That even makes Femi Otedla ownership of the bank also not becoming the majority shareholder. So we need a lot of clarity. We've heard today that it was brokered by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then the next time we heard that it was brokered by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation through a vehicle now that is now becoming like a hold it as a trustees for like a trustee vehicle that was established to warehouse these shares for the next 3 weeks. So there's a lot of statements that are not official. The NGX also, once there's a deal that is up to 5% holding, the NGX is supposed to come up with a statement to let us know who is doing that, because because of the kind of level of the transaction. And this, we're talking about 25% holding. We're talking about billions that were handled by various stockbroking firms. It was not even handled by one house. So this score, it should have been done more better. So that's why we think that there's no transparency there. Who is Emmanuel Suleiman? What does he do? What's the name of that company? Why was he established? Who are behind those companies? So we don't even really know all that. But we just know from sources that the Attorney General of the Federation, the Central Bank of Nigeria, to end the leadership crisis, that's why this deal was brokered. So it's still showing a lot of controversy until an official statement comes in from the exchange and also from First Holding itself.
Right, and we know it's the largest deal ever in NGX history, so it definitely calls for transparency there. But how do you see that lack of transparency, or the transparency you're not seeing? How do you see that impacting confidence, right, of current shareholders and prospective shareholders as well? We know that a lot of people were watching this legal tussle, were watching the board tussle as well, and what would you say are some of the key lessons from a legal standpoint, from the other players in the industry, in the banking industry, and shareholders as well?
Well, for shareholders, I think it's an end of an era that it was full with the good, the bad, the ugly. Remember, this was a bank that was the biggest bank in Nigeria in terms of profitability. This was the bank that also was the toast of shareholders. I mean, bank that paid consistent dividends, also bonuses for shareholders. All of a sudden, it became the bank that was the good time. The bad time became when the bank cannot even pay dividends, has not been able to pay consistent dividend. It's not among the largest bank in terms of profitability. There's a profitability still there. You have issues that have to do with internal issues that have to do with transparency. Again, all those are there, director dealing, insider dealings. All these affected that's the bad part of it. The ugly part of it is just the issue that you just addressed, the leadership crisis that also have engulfed that bank for a very, very long time in terms of who is the largest shareholder. So all these have made that bank that used to be the toast of investors, what investors tend to trade with caution. But the exit of Otudeko brought a little bit of excitement to shareholders because they felt that there was no internal control, and you could see that has helped the price. It was on full bid yesterday, closing at almost 30-something naira yesterday because of those issues that investors are now beginning to have confidence. And again, this confidence is likely driven because most investors felt that the 25% holding belongs to Femi Otedola, but now we are getting more information on it. We'll see how the market will respond to that today. Right. So in terms of shareholders values, if you want to look about that in terms of shareholder, you realize that the deal has installed a little bit of confidence for shareholders. But when you talk about international investors and what he has done to the market, it has brought to the forefront of what has been the challenge of the market: transparency, accountability, and integrity.
All right, and we'll get more into the impact on the stock itself as well. I mean, amidst the whole capital raising exercise, how this internal tussle may have affected the bank and perhaps what's ahead. I will get into that with you, Muktar Mohammed. Do stay with us after this break. Apparently a new era for First Holdco, and we're getting into it with Muktar Mohammed now. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Muktar. All right. I mean, so let's we were talking about the impact that this tussle had on the bank itself, especially its stock, especially amidst wider banking sector stock rally. We know that the banking sector has gained significantly. How has all this, corporate governance issues, corporate battles affected the banking stock itself, especially in the middle of a capital raise?
Well, in terms of positivity to the banking stocks, you could see that in the rally that we've been seeing in the banking stock for some time now. So that drawback yesterday. But again, it's still still confident in what has happened in the banking sector, the financial sector, and also First Holding. So I think, again, like I said, most investors thought that this deal was broker for Femi Otudeko to become the majority shareholder. So we'll wait and see. In terms of capital raise, I think I don't think they will have any issues. They have deep pocket investors, like I said again, with this current exit about 300 and something billion, and into an individual that will, whether it's federal government trustees or whatever we might call it, but at least that shows that a lot of investors are still confident in force holding of brand. So I don't think they will have challenge in raising those capitals. I think they will be able to scale through those capital raising because, again, like I said, this is the oldest institution in Nigeria. It's still the toast of investors in terms of profitability. First Holding is still profitable, and remember, it's not just First Bank. He had this First Bank holding. So I think a lot of investors will still have that positivity towards that equity, and I think they will scale through the recapitalization drive. I'm strongly believe they will scale through, because what will happen now, we are seeing trustees, it could come that those trustees now turn their equity into becoming, okay, we now want to own part of the company shares, and we are looking for 500 billion. And if you look at that transaction, even that transaction is about 300 and something billion. So I feel that they will scale the hurdle. I don't think that's a problem.
All right, we'll be monitoring that and much more. Now, coming to the role of the regulator in, the resolution of this. So what role would you say that the Central Bank of Nigeria perhaps has played in brokering this particular deal, and what does this say about regulatory intervention, especially in listed entities?
Well, for the CBN, I think, again, they've been intervening since. Remember that this intervention of the CBN started sometime in 2021 when the entire board of First Bank were removed by the then CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele. And also, they started also with the suspension of the MD at that time. Then the CBN waded in and suspended the whole board and returned the MD back. And they said that because First Bank cannot be allowed to collapse, it's going to cause a very serious systematic risk to the entire financial sector. So I think the CBN are not sitting on the fence as regards First Bank because of like I said, because of the kind of stance that, the kind of standing First Bank have in the financial institution in Nigeria, being one of Nigeria's oldest bank. And like I said, during when I started the program, it used to be the Central Bank of Nigeria before now. So definitely it's what they cannot allow to go down. And I think they've intervened well, and they have done well in terms of intervention. But again, we need more in terms of transparency about how this intervention has happened, whether it went through due process. That is one. Secondly, for the regulators, I don't think they've clothed themselves in glory with the type of way they handle this transaction, because we've not even heard from them almost 48 hours after this transaction. This is not good for investors' confidence. We need to know why behind this, so that will also ignite investors' confidence. So definitely for the regulators, I don't think they've clothed themselves in glory. But for the CBN, I think they have intervened to not only for this first time. I think the CBN is intervening not just to save customers, which they normally do, but to also preserve investors' funds. And for me, that's good.
Right. And do you reckon that the entrance of relatively unknown entities into core financial institutions, do you see that as a red flag or a sign of emerging investor appetite?
It's a red flag. We are not talking about we are talking about an institution, we are talking about a bank, we are talking about a bank that has a very good pedigree. It's a red flag. For me, it's a red flag, because it's not just an all-common type of investment. You're talking about a bank. If you have to say you are now owning about 25% holding of the bank, you become the majority shareholder. That means you have people on the board, you have a say in what happens in the board. You must be somebody that is knowledgeable so that you won't come and rock the boat. So for me, it's a red flag. Until we get clarity on that, for me, it's a red flag.
Yeah, and hopefully we get that much needed clarity. But we know that this move marks, aside the beginning of a new era, the end of an era. 24 years on the board. What legacy does Otudeko leave behind, especially with the influence of First Bank, and how do you think this will affect institutional memory?
Like I said, his legacy is good, it's bad, the ugly. But again, it would have been better. But investors are not really happy because they were more or less, this First Bank became a cash cow for Otudeko and some of his cronies. And that's why you see during the process whereby it was announced that it was a majority shareholders, a lot of shareholder groups came out and were protesting. I think it doesn't leave a good legacy, especially with the way it's exiting through a process of legal. A criminal charge must be dropped for him to say he was practically forced to sell off his shares to have a soft landing in the area of in terms of in the legal process. So he's not going out. The legacy is not a good legacy, having been there for 24 years. And these are lessons to every owners that or shareholder or majority shareholder that an institution like that should not be your cash cow to the detriment of the minority shareholders.
So strong lessons there, and also, as you have pointed out, calls for transparency. Hopefully we see that from the CBN and the NGX itself being the largest transaction in history. Thank you so much for your time and perspective on this conversation. Muktar Mohammed, CEO, Finance with Muktar.
Thank you for having me.
All right.